Can you really quickly just tell me, like, give me a brief description? What is crypto gaming? Or is that even the right term? Would it be like GameFi? Or what would you call it?
Crypto gaming's fine. Blockchain gaming, Web3 gaming. There's a lot of definitions for it, but it's essentially the same as mainstream gaming. Only the integration of NFTs, which enables the ownership of assets and the ability to take those assets and and use them in other gaming experiences inside of an ecosystem. It also enables things like token incentivization. So in Illuvium's case, we have 10% of our tokens have been portioned off for rewards. So any types of like tournaments or leaderboards or anything like that where we're really trying to incentivize people to play, we have that those rewards that we can give out.
That's awesome. All right. And how would you describe, like, what is Illuvium?
So Illuvium is the world's first AAA interoperable blockchain game. So we're building 3 gaming experiences at once. The first one is Illuvium Zero, which is a mobile friendly game, which is an industrial city builder. Then you've got the Overworld, which is this very expansive, immersive world that you go out and capture these creatures. You build weapons and armor and all sorts of stuff like that. You've got 7 regions to go out and explore. It's a huge open world. And then you've got the competitive game, which is Illuvium Arena, and that is an auto battler. So super strategic. You got very competitive battles there. That's where we have more of our esports scene, and all 3 games are interconnected. So you take the assets from all of them, and they're all essentially interchangeable between games.
Okay. So I actually played Illuvium a bunch yesterday. It was my first time playing it, but it was actually super fun. I only meant to play it for like half an hour, but I ended up playing it for like 2 hours because I was like running around, catching or getting all the resources, and I caught a few alluvials. The first couple times I just got like they wiped the floor with me. It was ridiculous. But I got my youngest, or not youngest, second to youngest, playing as well, and he was addicted to it. Like he could on Thursdays we do like video game day, and he normally would play another game, but he's like, oh, I want to try that, and he ended up playing it for like a couple hours. He loved it. So it is really fun. It was weirdly addicting. I've tried a couple different crypto games, and they've never really caught my like interest because they're usually pretty boring. But this didn't feel like a crypto game. This just felt like a game that you wouldn't even really know crypto was involved, I guess, unless you came into it knowing that. And that kind of leads into my next question, though. What how does Illuvium using crypto allow it to be better than like if it wasn't using crypto? Like, say if it was just a normal game, why does it use crypto? What does that make it better, or how does that make it better?
So the biggest reason for me, and the thing that really gravitated me towards crypto gaming and thinking that this could be a very large paradigm shift in terms of mainstream gaming, is the idea of verifiable ownership of assets, right? There's been, since basically the dawn of time, people have been spending hundreds, if not thousands, of hours playing a game, and they get really good at it, and they get, think of World of Warcraft, where people are running around, they're farming gold, they've got all of these good items and whatever, and Blizzard didn't want anyone to be able to sell their items, so they didn't actually own it. It was they're saved on a server somewhere, and you're basically at the mercy of the developer. Whereas with blockchain games, we give you that ownership, and so any of the alluvials that you capture, any of the weapons that you create, any of the armor, any of the skins that you have, the emotes, like every single thing in our game is basically an NFT, which allows you to then go onto our marketplace. It allows you to sell them. It allows you to trade them. You can buy them, and it creates this meta economy, which makes it a really, really enjoyable experience. And again, you don't need to do this in our game. It's an option, and so we make the crypto side of it something that you can educate yourself on as you go through, but it's not a requirement when you come in. You don't even need a wallet. We'll create that for you. You don't see it, it sits in the background. And the minute that you're ready to say, do one of these things, like sell one of your assets on the marketplace, that's when you can learn a little bit more about it. And then at that point, you're already onboarded and you didn't realize it, but the idea of being able to sell something inside of a game is not new to people. It's just a new technology which we're adopting.
So I've been really trying to wrap my head around crypto gaming, just because so I'm like into crypto investing, right? And so I want to understand why it's important, or is it just like a cool, like shiny feature that, everyone's investing around but doesn't actually have any value? And kind of the conclusion that I've come to is, like, if you think of something like, and I just want to, I guess, hear if this rings true with you. If you think of something like the Mona Lisa is just paint, canvas, and really that's it. And if you think of like the ingredients that it takes to make that, it's not very expensive. Maybe it's like $100, $200. So it's worth currently, I think, like $500 million, and it's not valued on that. The value doesn't come from like what it's made of. It also doesn't come from the art itself, because if you go on Amazon, you can go and, buy a printout of that same exact picture and hang it on your wall, and it looks exactly the same. Really, where the value for the Mona Lisa comes is the history tied to that exact object. The reason somebody would be willing to pay that ridiculous amount of money for that exact object is because that's the exact one that Leonardo da Vinci painted, and so it has a history tied to it. And so it's a digital artifact, or sorry, it's an artifact. But if you think of NFT or online, we've never had anything like an artifact, a digital artifact, the ability for an item to have history outside of like maybe a domain name. But what NFTs or crypto really enables is this concept of digital artifacts, this concept of like you can have an item that has a history tied to it. And it seems like a really small change or small tweak, but really it enables a lot of different, these entire economies that never before were able to exist. Does that ring true to you at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So we tie directly into that, and I think is as well what makes that Mona Lisa so valuable is there is only one Mona Lisa, right? Like you can print as many copies as you want, and that's why you see people online trolling Bored Ape holders and Azuki holders, and they'll say, watch your $50,000 ape. I can just right click save and then I can make it my PFP. And the difference is you don't have something that you can prove is an original, right? So what is a fake worth? You look at all items that have rarity. There is so much history there where people like look at shoes, for example. You've got Nikes and Adidas shoes that go for like $1,500. There's a big business in China where they all create knockoffs, and they don't go for $1,500, but they might go for $100, $120, and people will pay for that, right? And so having the one and only of something has a lot of value attached to it. In our case, we have how we're sort of playing into that is we have sets. So similar to how Pokemon sets up their characters, as you go through those games, they add a few new characters. Sometimes they add 20, 30, 40 new characters. But the idea with Pokemon is When you move to a new game, you don't get to keep those characters. Whereas in our case, you do. And so we have sets as well where every 12 months, maybe 12 to 18 months, depending on how we go, you will never be able to capture those alluvials again, right? And so if a player is coming into the system 5 years later, right, and these characters are connected to another game, which enables you to unlock so many different strategies and gameplay and abilities. And so if you've got someone that's playing with this 5-year-old character that you can no longer get anymore, someone will be like, what the hell was that? What did I just come up against? Like, I've never seen that before. It's not in the current set. And in fact, it wasn't even in the last 3 sets. It was in the first set, the original. So it's got that history, as you're saying, of one of the original characters that were caught. And so inherently, you just gain value based on that.
See, what I love about that is versus like a normal NFT or even the Mona Lisa. The Mona Lisa, again, I can go on Amazon and get a printout. An NFT, like you said, you can right click and save. It's not the original, right? And that's not the original Mona Lisa. But like you said, there's knockoff Nikes and they carry some weight, some value. But with what you're doing, you can't even knock it off. Like you can't fake a character.
Because you can't because you can't play with it, right? Like you might have one of those jerks go online and be like, yeah, I can't believe that Ramfire that you went and paid $10,000 for it. But the difference is with us, there's actual utility behind that NFT, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't take that copy, that JPEG that you just saved and port it into our game. It just doesn't work, right? So that's the key difference there.
Yeah, and that's crazy. I see. I didn't actually know that you guys are going to have sets like that. So that was new. That's new news to me, and that's super smart because it reminds me of Fortnite. And you know, when they originally came out, they had those skins, right? And they are probably the worst skins in the game as far as like what they've ever released. But those are currently today still the most highly sought after because so few players have them. And so, man, that is so cool. And to me, it makes gaming more fun because there's a whole new element to it, and that's like almost like it's like collectibles in a way. There's like an entire new element of collectibles, like Pokemon cards or different things like that games have never had before. At least they've never had meaningfully before.
Yeah, and obviously we have that with cosmetics as well, and I have an idea that any of the original cosmetics that are released are going to have that the same effect will occur. But where it gets really interesting is with the gameplay, right? Like some of these characters that you'll never be able to capture again. If you want them, you'll have to buy it from someone else on the marketplace. They have different classes and affinities, and so when you're talking about going into the arena, you might need another fire type character or air type character, or you might need a rogue, or you might need a bulwark, or whatever it might be. And there's only going to be a certain amount in whatever set is available. So if you're coming in and all of a sudden you can augment your team with you just need that one more air alluvial, and then you'll be able to create the synergy of say 7 air units, which is super strong on the board. You might not have been able to do that without buying someone else's from a previous set. And so it really it not only holds the value, which is the opposite of what we saw back in 2021, where people would just go, like the games that were out, it was basically just breed, and you're creating the same thing over and over and over. Of course, they're going to lose value because as soon as you have less people coming into the ecosystem, you're creating multiples of the assets, they get diluted. Whereas in our case, there's utility that you can't access unless you want to buy it from someone else. And hey, I might say, well, you know what? I don't want to sell it to you. And the reason I don't want to sell it to you is because I know how valuable this is now, let alone in another 5 years. And then where it gets really, really cool is inside of this interoperable universe that we're building. The first 3 games are set. A new game might come out in the future, and you'll be able to take that alluvial that you caught in that set from 5 years prior, and that will be a whole new character inside of, obviously it'll have the same traits and whatever, but if it's a car racing game, it might turn it into a vehicle that has all of the same sort of similar omegas and whatever, and someone else, like, that's a flex, right? Like, you're
Yeah.
going through this new game, and we would have all of the starting cars that you normally would because it's a brand new game. But then there'll be these really OG, super limited cars that you can get if you have this asset. And other people are just going to go, what the hell is that? I want that, right? Like, just because I can't have it, I want it, right? And then who knows what people pay for that type of thing.
This reminds me a lot of like Magic the Gathering and how they started out with their, alpha set came out. And now you look back at those cards, those original cards that came out in the 90s. And some of them are worth like $40,000. It's crazy because they're so rare. And you could never have that in video games before. At least, I suppose, like there, World of Warcraft, there are like items that people have, but you can't sell them. As far as I know, like with most of these things, you're not able to sell them, and you didn't ever truly own it. It's like the game just kind of holds it for you. And so this is really exciting to me. And I see what you mean about like the characters. Like I can imagine, some sort of like online card game. So right now you have the auto battler, but what if you wanted a grand strategy game? And then each of these characters, resources, etc., represented a card in that game. And so it's, truly interoperable. That's kind of like what you're going for.
100%. We're proving it now where instead of just being that creature capture type game and like hundreds of millions of people play those games, we don't stop there and we say, hey, if you like this other genre, take your asset that you just caught and bring it into this arena where it's an auto battler. There's 30 million people that play auto battlers out there. And if you have that character, then you'll be able to play that character. And so the opportunities are endless. And this is where interoperability is a word that a lot of people use inside of Web3, and it pisses off the people that are in mainstream because they're like, you can't just take a Mario character and chuck it into the Zelda world or whatever. Like there's standards there where it just doesn't work. And but inside of your own ecosystem where we control what platform we're using, what engine we're building on, the graphic style, all of those things, you can, and it's almost limitless where you can bring these assets. So it's pretty cool when you think about it, but because it's so new, it's a tough concept to grasp. Like as you said, like it's like, is this actually going to be better for people, or is this just kind of a marketing ploy for blockchain companies to get VC money and stuff like that? Like I get that, but there are 2 or 3 things, not the 50 things that typical blockchain companies will come out and say, this is going to change the world. You'll be printing money from your screen and all this kind of stuff. Like there's a few features which make the gaming experience really, really, really good, right? And that's what it is. But that's all it needs to be.
Yep. I mean, my 10-year-old, he got it right away. So I explained the concept to him. I explained the concept that you could collect these like Pokemon cards. He has a bunch of Pokemon cards, so like he's always trading them. He's always looking up their values, and so as soon as he heard it, he's like, "Oh, I want to play that. I want to go out and find some and collect them. Maybe I'll get some that are valuable in the future." And so like it clicked instantly for him. I really don't think like it's a mix of so many concepts people are familiar with. It took me playing it for it really to click though. And so I think for a lot of people, it'll be like they try it, and then they're like, wow, I get it now. Because the first time I caught an alluvial, I was like, oh, okay, I have one of these things. Like I just caught one. I was like, maybe that'll be valuable in the future. This is cool. This is kind of addicting. I want to go get more of these. And it's really similar to like opening a card pack or something like that. It's like it's
Mhm.
got that same kind of addictive feeling that makes it so fun and so exciting. And so I could see a lot of people really sticking with that and it clicking with them. And like you said, is it gimmicky or is it not gimmicky? I think there's definitely I would say probably 99% of crypto games are very gimmicky and they're not fun to play. But I would say that's not the case with this game and hopefully some others that are coming out, because they're just taking a really fun game and a concept and enabling these cool new features that make the game more interesting and give it more depth. Which, by the way, when you're talking about interoperable games, I mean, I'd love to see something like I mean, I know this is a little bit more it's a pretty big ask, but some sort of like big RPG or something like that built in the Illuvium world would be really fun, I think. So, like sort of like Pokemon style, you go around, you kind of or you take your Illuvials, you battle, and you kind of go through some sort of story plot or something like that. Sure, it's far off, but
It's coming. It's coming. Don't worry.
okay, cool. So I wanted to get a little bit into the kind of nitty gritty of the ILV token. I know there's governance around the like using the ILV token. So it's kind of pivoting away a little bit, and we'll pivot back. But so what is the ILV token used for as far as governance goes?
So there's two use cases for it. The first one is for voting. So we've set up, and we did this before we even launched our token. We basically set up a governance structure where the token holders, every epoch, and they've varied based on other governance proposals, extending them, shortening them. We've tried a bunch of different timeframes. The current epoch, which is starting, I think in like next week, actually, it's pretty soon, is 9 months, but they're typically around 3 to 6 months usually, and basically what happens is the token holders come together, they vote in 5 council members that they want to see basically govern the protocol, and then there's another vote for the community council. So we have what we call the IMC, the main council, and then we have the community council, and then we have this proposal process where any sort of improvements to the protocol that anyone who's a token holder can propose, they basically send through, and that community council will take a look at it. They'll vet it, make sure it's even possible. They might talk to the team and say like, how tangible is this? Like, how would this be beneficial? They gather all of that kind of stuff, and the proposals that they do think should be seen by the IMC, they push through with their own vote. And then once the IMC gets it, they deliberate. We've got 4 sorry, not councils. We've got 4 committees that have very, very seasoned experts. In this epoch, we've got guys from IMX, we've got guys from Delphi, we've got some ex-Parify, we've got Framework, we've got 1inch, and like a bunch of other, even a guy from Visa. So there's some really, really big talent that this IMC basically draws upon, right? So a proposal comes through, it might be token related. Therefore, they'll go to the strategy council and the strategy committee, and they'll say, hey, we're talking about extending staking, and we're obviously not, but just for argument's sake, something like that. And then those advisors would come back and say, this is what we think we should do based on our 10 years of crypto experience. And they would take that advice. Maybe they don't agree with it and they still vote a different way, or maybe they do accept that advice and say, hey, yep, I agree with you, and then they vote accordingly, and then the majority goes through. And then essentially once proposals are approved, the Illuvium Labs team goes and implements whatever that proposal might be.
What are the other use cases of the ILV token?
So the second use case is actually quite a bit. I don't know. Some people love governance, but a lot of people like sort of token goes up, and this was something that we built into our tokenomics very, very early. It's super experimental, but it's basically what we call rev distribution. So 100% of the revenues that are generated in the protocol, in terms of in-game revenues, are distributed back to the token holders. And how that is done is we pull, let's say we go and make $10 million of ETH with people buying things in game and traveling and curing shards and all of the different actions you can take inside the game. We then take that $10 million of ETH and we buy ILV back off the market, and then we send it back to stakers proportionately based on how much you have staked and how long you are staked. And so every time we have a buy, you see this nice increase in the token price. And what the system is designed to do is we've got a finite amount of tokens that are in circulation. The maximum that it can be is 10 million. And so what I believe is going to happen, and we've only ever done one distribution, so it's not been a regular thing yet because our game isn't launched. But what I believe is going to happen is, instead of people getting that distribution and then just selling it back into ETH or USDC or whatever currency that they want to cash out on it, I think they'll sell a portion of it, and another portion of it they will just restake, because they know the next month there's going to be another distribution and they want a larger percentage of the pie. And so ideally what happens there is you constantly get people locking up and you get less tokens in circulation. So as we buy more tokens and generate more revenue, the price just continues to go up. That's it in theory anyway.
So how do you guys as a company make money then?
That's the golden question. So everyone asks that, like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna run out of money at some stage. So basically, we are holders as well. So the DAO, Illuvium DAO, holds about 15% of the tokens. So of that $10 million, we would make 1.5 million, and then we use that for operational costs, staffing costs, legal, all that kind of stuff.
Got it. I mean, the scale of what you guys want to build, it's going to start off slow. I remember original Minecraft is like, you could do like it was very limited. There was very few things you could do. There's very few biomes. There's very few things you could craft. And a lot of people look at Minecraft as it is today and they're like, wow, this is crazy that they built this, forgetting that when they originally built it, it was very, very small. It was a really limited use case. And they incrementally, marginally improved it over the years to add and build out that world that it is today. And so to me, I look at Illuvium today and I see, it's awesome. It's fun. But this is like really, really early days where I think people look back as well and they'll be like, man, how did people play that game? There's so little to do compared to today. And so that's really what gets me excited, is that marginal improvement. And I think that's where you'll start to see those revenues, keep climbing, because, even up to date, it's just been in beta. Nobody can play anything except for Illuvium 0, right?
No, you can play all three of our games. You can play Overworld, you can play survival mode. The only mode that you can't play yet is PvP, which is coming on the 28th of this month.
Got it. So that's not in beta?
It will still be in beta. We don't actually connect up the blockchain until early next year. So, but you can get a sense of, okay, I can go and capture an alluvial, I can go and
Got it.
Play in the arena, I can battle people, there's leaderboards, there's all that kind of stuff. So you'll get a really good sense of what it's going to be.
Got it. And one more, question about the ILV token. Is there any in-game use for the ILV token? Like if you buy things off the marketplace, you have to use ILV token or anything like that?
No, so there is kind of it's not really a use case, but essentially, for our staking program, 30% of our token we wanted to be distributed through yield farming, so we had a really even distribution, and we allowed people to claim their rewards, their staking rewards, as the in-game token instead. And effectively, what that does is burn the ILV. So when I said 10 million is the maximum, it's actually probably going to end up more like 9.5 million, just purely based on people claiming what our in-game token, which is SILV2, so essentially synthetic ILV, and that has the same value in our ecosystem as ILV, and that means that you can use that for in-game purchases. But once that's fully used up, it'll never be used again, and the only way that you can purchase things in our game is with ETH.
It'd be cool if like there was a way that if you had a certain amount staked and you locked it up for a certain amount of time period, you could get like unique skins or like, you know what I mean? Like gamify the staking process too. That'd be fun.
We've thought about things like that, but we want to keep that for
In game. Yeah. I can see pushback on that. Like it's like, oh, that's pay to play and people don't like that.
Well, I mean, to be honest, when you buy land, that's you need to build something called a research lab, put that on your land plot, and then as alluvials roam past your land, you don't actually see them in Illuvium 0, but as they do, your research center picks them up, and then you can go and you can go and scan them, and occasionally you'll pick up a blueprint. That blueprint is what is needed in the overworld to go and actually create that skin, which is also really cool because you might be the only person in the world who's ever researched and found that skin. And so you have this like business in itself, in that if someone else wants to buy that skin, you're the only one who can create it until someone else researches or finds and then researches that skin and goes, yep, now I can make it. Then all of a sudden you've got two people who can make that skin, and maybe that person previously was saying, I will only sell this skin at $10,000 because I know how rare it is. I'm the only one who's got it. Then all of a sudden some guy comes in and he's like, finally, I unlocked it 2 years later. I'm sick of this guy's monopoly. I'm going to sell these skins for $10. Now, I don't know, but it creates again like this meta game inside of our game, which I think is pretty cool. And we have like stuff like that across the entire ecosystem we've thought of.
Going on, you talked about PvP being something that's coming out. I think it's on the 28th, right? Yeah. Can you explain kind of how PvP works with like fight to win ETH and that whole thing?
With what? Sorry.
It's always like I always see the marketing for it that's like fight to win ETH PvP.
Right.
Yeah. Can you explain how that works?
Sure. So we basically have a leaderboard system. So it's your standard ELO ranking system, very similar to what you would find in League of Legends and whatever. And you basically need to go through and rank up. So for the beginners that first start out, you start off and you go from bronze to silver to gold to like diamond, and then from diamond you go to hollow, I think it is. I don't know, we've changed them a few times, but the point is you rank up, and you do that through winning the competitive battles inside of the ranked mode. And that leaderboard to get into those ranks has a reward system where you can actually earn currency from that. So that's where you get the fight for ETH. Uh, in terms of like the actual gameplay, it's basically you can bring in a team. So you need to form. You get the maximum. The maximum your team size can be is 28 at the moment. We've gone from 25 to 30. We're testing a few things, but you can bring in 28 things. So that includes your alluvials, your armor, your weapons, and your augments. And the idea is it's highly strategic. You need to be able to really counter quite strongly. So it's recommended that you bring in a team that kind of offsets what you have. So if in the sense of bringing in fire, there's a bunch of comps like an earth comp which would really do some damage. And to counter that, you basically want to have a pivot option where you can go in and build a whole bunch of air units. And so you want to bring in around about, I would say ideal is about 14 alluvials, a couple of weapons, a couple of sets of armor, and then the rest augments to really put on your characters to give them like uh, omnivam. So like every time they hit, they actually get some health back. You can get some big health buffs across your team or individually. There's some really cool like a tidal wave comes across the board and knocks everyone up and stuns them and does some big damage and things like that. And positioning is a big thing. And yeah, you don't actually control the characters, which is quite interesting when it comes to typical gaming combat. You basically place them on the board and then they'll auto attack. That's where you get the name Auto Battler. And yeah, it's super addictive. The game that we built, as you would have seen in the overworld, the graphics are insane. So our competitor, Teamfight Tactics, they and like gameplay wise, I think it'll be interesting. I definitely think we're up there with them, especially considering we're just in a beta. But graphics wise, we blow them away. Like it's not even close.
Is there like a guide or something? Because I was playing yesterday and I was like trying to figure, I was doing the battling and I couldn't figure out like, there's like the plus over my character. And like if I touched another character, when I touched the plus, it like did something where they all kind of highlighted. There's a couple things I was like trying to figure out exactly how the mechanics worked. Is there a guide or anything that on the site that you can go to see all these things, to learn these things?
Absolutely, yeah. So we put out a blog. We also put out a YouTube video. So whether you like to read text or you like to consume
Got it.
videos, we've got something for both. We also will have an in-game tutorial. It's not going to be. There is one for the overworld, but there isn't one for arena.
Mm.
But you'll be able to watch that outside of the game. I think we're going to have a link to it. But yeah, that'll go through as like a TLDR, you know, a shortened version of like what that plus thing is actually bonding to a character, right? So whatever that character's traits are, or as we call them, affinities and classes, if you bond your ranger to them, then you'll actually get a +1 on whatever those classes and affinities are. So it's really helpful if you have 2 water characters out there. Getting 3 water characters, for example, makes them much stronger. It allows them to their energy regen goes up massively, and so bonding one of your rangers to one of those water units will get you that 3 synergy, and it'll unlock that. So it's a way of not being able to get there without actually having all 3 units on the board.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Um, you mentioned your competitor. You have some competitors. There's other people building crypto games. Besides Illuvium, what other crypto-enabled games like to get you excited? Where you like see a game and you're like, they're actually building something pretty interesting.
So I was a massive Heroes of Might and Magic fan back in the day, like back in '90s type stuff. I think I was like 6 when I first started playing it, and John Kavanagh was the creator of Heroes of Might and Magic, all the way up. Like I think they created like 6 of them in the end. Uh, he's coming to Web3, or not coming. He's here. He's built. That he's building this version. And I asked him. I was on an AMA with him. I was like, please tell me it's not some crazy new concept. And he's like, it's Heroes of Might and Magic, but with ownership of assets, with incentivization. And I was like, amazing, right? Like that's super cool. And so I'm excited about that. I'm very excited about Civitas, which is essentially another sort of community city building game, but at a much grander scale than what we're talking about with Illuvium Zero. And that is really cool because they have sub DAOs where you can join that sub DAO, and it's this community voting process, and whatever you want to do inside of that city has to be voted on. So you have these town halls where everyone comes along and says like, I think we should build a library, or I think we should build this. And the cool thing there is it will end up being that all of those all of the different colonies inside the game can start fighting each other, and then they'll vote like, do we go into war with this other sub DAO and like join forces with them to try and take out this. So it gets really, really interesting, and they've leaned into the governance model quite well. So I'm super excited about that. But there's not many, man. Like there is like as much as there's like 500 to 1,000 being built now. I don't get much time to vet other projects and check them out anymore. But B, most of them started building last year, if not like, even before that. So it takes a while to get to a point where you're like, okay, now I actually see A, gameplay, and B, like their vision of how this game's going to be. And so, I'm very, very optimistic about crypto gaming in the future. I think in the next 3, 4, 5 years, it's going to be, you'll lose that crypto gaming side of thing, and it'll just be a new type of gaming, similar to how free to play when that first came out. It just, and everyone hated, was like, how dare you? Why would you do that? It's going to ruin gaming. We're not going to be able to make money out of them. No one will be able to fund games anymore. We won't be able to pay developers. Then all of a sudden it's like, hey, I got an idea. Give it to them for free. Get them hooked. Then sell them a cosmetic. And, Fortnite appears.
Yeah, it really is. It really is like the evolution. Like it's like, hey, free to play, sell them a cosmetic, and then crypto gaming just takes it another step forward. And says, hey, what if they could own that cosmetic? What if they could own that asset you're selling them? Instead of just like selling them an asset that's worthless as soon as they stop playing this game, what if it was something that they could, own as a collectible? Yeah, and I would imagine too, like Axie Infinity was the bar before, right? And it was like such a low bar. I don't think it got gaming developers excited. I think most people probably that built video games kind of were like, what is this? This is,
I mean, not just like that was the game that made me think there's something here, and not because of the gameplay, like definitely not because of the gameplay. That allowed me to see like what are NFTs inside of games, and this whole idea of like there's a marketplace and all this kind of stuff was what got me onto it. But if I didn't do deep research into that game, when I first showed my brothers that game, I remember being on a video call with them, and I was like, this is the future, guy. And they were like, look, are you smoking crack over there? Like, what? Like, you've been playing games all your life. Like, this is not it. And I was like, no, you don't understand. Don't look at the game. And this is as I'm like paying literally $1,300 just on board. They're like, what the you doing? I'm like, oh, it's $1,300. Like, don't worry about that. Like, I'll make that back when I sell the assets. And they're just like, dude, no. But here we are. So
yeah, it kind of went crypto kitties, and then that was like the first like sort of proto crypto game. and then you had Axie Infinity, which got everyone excited about, like, oh my gosh, like it made a lot of money and a lot of people were playing it. I think at one point it reached like a fourth the players of Fortnite, which that blew my mind at the height. And then, but it wasn't a fun game. And then now this cycle, it's looking like Illuvium is going to be the game that has all those same elements that made the other one successful, but it's actually a fun game to play. And I feel like that's
actually a good game, yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be the spark for people to be like, oh, they made a lot of money. That's a fun game. And it raises the bar. So now people can't put out lower quality games anymore. They have to put out fun games. And that's, I think, what you're going to see, because normally the game's, development cycles, like, it's quite a long time, like 5 to 10 years. I think what you're going to see, though, is a lot of indie games switch and just add crypto features or ownership into their games using tools like Immutable X and different things like that, just plugging into those systems. And so I think we will see maybe some interesting games coming to market a little bit quicker than this last cycle. Would you say that's possible, at least?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think so. Immutable signed like 500 deals in the last 2 years, so I can 100% see that happening.
Yeah, I just saw something about Ubisoft's partnering with like Polygon or Immutable or something like that.
Yeah, with Immutable, so that's a huge deal. They're doing stuff like that like every week now. There's a new deal coming to IMX, which is great for us, right? Because its users are a little bit fragmented at the moment. You've got Ronin, which is obviously heavily skewed to Axie players, but they just signed Pixels, which is this game that wasn't on Ronin. Then all of a sudden they go to Ronin and their active users goes through the roof. So there's a huge play there, right? Like developers have a choice, like which platform do I build on? And we're lucky in that we were so early, like we started building this in late 2020, that we were able to capitalize, and we're pretty good at user acquisition. And so we really, really got people hyped up about our game. And so I think we could be okay on any chain. Now that being said, IMX is amazing, right? Like they've done really, really well for us. They've customized their platform to fit around our game, and but having said that, we're bringing already well over 1 million people organically ourselves. It's almost just as much a win for Immutable to have us as it is them work with us. So it's a very good relationship that we have there. But yeah,
because they got their passport wallet and all that, and once players get used to using that, it makes it a lot easier for any other game that wants to get set up. It's the same process. Players already know how to do it, and so it makes jumping into a game that much easier. So I can see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, like, in your opinion, just like in all honesty, how big do you see crypto gaming eventually getting? Is it just going to be like a niche, like, oh, this is like a cool little niche, or do you see it like becoming massive? Like this is the future of gaming.
I think it'll be the future of gaming. As I said, I don't think I don't think we'll be calling it crypto gaming, NFT gaming, Web3 gaming. The minute that a game comes out that is the same quality as mainstream and offers verifiable ownership of assets, players aren't going back, right? Like it doesn't happen. They look at history, look at every single industry since the dawn of time. It doesn't matter if if the consumer wants something and this product has been made available to them and it's such a better experience, they don't turn around and say, you know what, we accept you for who you are. They don't give a right? They're like, no, we want a better product experience. If you're not going to give it to us, we're going to jump across to our competitor. Look at what Uber did to the taxi industry, right? It's something like that. Now, do people accept that they need to call up this line, sit there, there's an operator who doesn't care, you're watching taxis go by, and it's like, hey, I know, like, I can see one available right now. Like, do you think after someone gets in that first Uber ride that they're like, you know what, that was amazing, but I'm going to go back to the taxis. Like, no, it's not how consumerism works. And so I genuinely think as soon as we get experiences across the board, we're 3 genres. There's 25 different genres out there. We need sporting games, we need car racing games, we need battle royales, we need MOBAs, we need RPGs, we need all of these different categories for people to say like, yeah, like I go and play that game and I don't need to spend $2,000 to go in, but I own my assets and it competes with Fortnite. So then that happens for 4 or 5 years and it's game over. You get 1 billion people, maybe even 2 billion people in the next sort of like 5 to 7 years that are going to migrate across. Like it's very, very clear in my head.
I could see it because it's like, you know, if you have a game that's just as fun as Fortnite, but you can own those skins and they have resale value, even if it's cheap, it doesn't have to be like, you know, people sell NFTs $50,000, $1 million. It doesn't have to be like that. It could be like, you can resell this thing for $50, $10. It doesn't matter. Like it just,
whatever.
Yeah, whatever it is, whatever people are willing to pay for it. But that's going to be inherently just more fun and exciting because you feel like you're actually accomplishing something versus just playing a normal game and you're getting those skins that, like, you know, are behind this old school paywall that, you know, nobody else can access because you don't have ownership of it. I could see that. Even like sports games, you know, you're playing 2020 football game and you get like this year's player, right? You collect that NFT. Well, the next year's football game comes out, it's different stats, and you have the 2021 player. And you might want to collect every year your favorite player and their different stat versions, you know, different things like that.
100%. Like, how many people want Brady, right? Like, you know, he's retired, you can't get him anymore. And, you know, how cool would that be to be like, whoa, shit, you're playing with some Hall of Famer from like 15 years ago or whoever it is. You know, like, that's the type of stuff where people will not accept being sold FIFA 20, FIFA 21, FIFA 22, FIFA 23. Like, they'll just be like, get there's a better experience over there. I'm not going to go back, right? Like, we want to push forward. You've already shown these guys over here have shown us that it can be just as good, except a better experience across so many other aspects. Why? Like, are you playing Pokemon again? Are your kids gonna play Pokemon again when one game in you've got Pokemon over here where you go and capture all of these Pokemon characters, you can't do anything with them. There's no marketplace, can't hold on to them. If they shut the game down, it's game over. In our case, they can capture an alluvial. It looks just as good. It's just as fun. And they can hold on to that for the next 30 years. Imagine the Pokemon games that we grew up playing.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if you could keep those characters from those versions and then still be playing them in games today, 30 years on or whatever it is. You know, like, that's the type of stuff that this untaps. And it's too good of a shift for people to go, you know what? Yeah, I'll take the mediocre thing that I was used to last year. Like, it's not going to happen.
I could see it. And I could see, like, you know, it's almost like a race to build up the strongest network effect first, like you are with Illuvium, you know, and I could see what's going to happen is there are going to be some huge games. And then you're going to see games like World of Warcraft pivot and be like, hey, we're going to revive World of Warcraft via in-game ownership. And so, you know, they do this whole update, this big marketing pull of like, here, you know, we're doing this. And you're going to see a lot of these games try to revive their audiences via in-game ownership. But again, it's like, you know, right now BlackRock and everyone's competing to be the biggest ETF, right? Well, you're going to want the biggest IP via in-game ownership and like interoperability, like what you guys are trying to do, because you can just launch a new game. Like, you know, you have the 3 games right now. Well, you launch the card game, you launch the RPG, and people are going to want to play it because it's going to make the value of their asset. You know, it's more valuable monetary wise, but it's also more 100%. Utility valuable. And so like they're going to be invested into that that IP, into that world. And I could see it. I see it playing out exactly as you're saying, and that gets me really excited about the future of gaming and blockchain gaming and asset ownership. So I wanted to ask you, in your view, because you're like in the thick of all this, do you see crypto gaming? Like, when do you see it taking off? Is this within the next 2 years, within the next 5 years, within the next 10 years?
So, all of the games that started building in 2021 will likely start going live in 2025 ish. Maybe a few will launch in 2024, but I have a sneaky feeling that the majority will launch in 2025. We will be absolutely launched and it'll be early next year. But again, we're only one game, right? So, our total addressable market right now is about 100 million potentially, right? Like all things considered, the genres that we're in, people who aren't like screw crypto, like they're open to it. It's about 100 million. That can only be opened up with other genres, and we aren't going like we're certainly going to start building new gaming experiences, but again, they're going to take time. So it's not going to be like when I say like proper take off, I mean like 100 million, 200 million, 300 million people in this space playing games. I don't think that happens until 2025.
Got it. Okay, and then from your standpoint, from like an investing standpoint, where do you see like the most value accrual or the most opportunity currently? Is it like crypto gaming tokens? Is it the in-game items? That's where you see the most value accrual, happening, or is it like maybe in-game resources? What would your viewpoint be?
So, yeah, so finding a good game, that's the first thing. And then diversifying across the different assets that you have in that game. It really is tied back to the IP. If you think that the IP is strong, there is a very, very, very high chance that those assets will appreciate in value as that studio starts to deliver new experiences and new ways for you to utilize your NFTs. So it's not a bad bet diversifying into all of the different assets that they have. But then also, if you're an investor, which I've put money into probably 120 different gaming projects over the last 3 years, I go into the token as well. But then if I really like them, as I said, I start diversifying out through the in-game stuff as well.
All right, last question. If people want to follow you, what's the best place to go to follow you?
Twitter is probably the best place. I can be a little controversial at times. I don't think people like me being so realistic when it comes to some of the bullshit claims that founders make in this space to try and pump their tokens and stuff like that. So I don't know if you don't like controversy, probably don't follow me and just follow the Illuvium account. But yeah, I'm pretty active on Twitter.
Yeah, I think everyone loves a little drama, so definitely makes Twitter more interesting. All right, well, it's been great talking to you, and catch you later.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Jesse.